watching the English newscast here on Future Television. I'm Linda Tamim, and these are today's top stories. Thousands of people, including Prime Minister-designate Saad Hariri, participate in the annual Beirut Marathon. Maronite Patriarch Bashar al-Ra'i calls for the formation of an inclusive government before Independence Day. And a powerful magnitude 7.8 earthquake rocks New Zealand, prompting a tsunami warning. Thousands of people have come together in Beirut early this morning to participate in the annual Beirut Marathon, a charitable and sporting event which draws people from across the country and around the world. The marathon included 11 different races for adults, women, special needs individuals, students and children accompanied by their parents. The race spans through various neighborhoods in and around the Lebanese capital, including Ras Beirut, Hamra, Bush Hamoud, Jdeide, Dbaye and Mar Mikhail. Lebanese Prime Minister-designate Saad Hariri took part in the 7-kilometer fun race. Hariri said a marathon was also taking place in the formation of the government, whereby parties are competing for ministries. He said Lebanon is doing very well, especially following the election of President Michel Aoun, which has brought a sense of comfort for everyone. Maronite Patriarch Bashar al-Ra'i has called for the formation of an inclusive government before Independence Day on November 22nd. During his Sunday Mass sermon, Ra'i said the Lebanese want the anticipated new government to be an all-inclusive, consensual and effective government, a government that unites rather than divides, that shares responsibilities in line with the National Pact and the Constitution, not with the mentality of the distribution of shares or clinging to a certain ministerial portfolio. Iraqi soldiers have captured Nimrud, the site of an ancient Assyrian city overrun by the Islamic State 2 years ago. The Iraqi government says Nimrud was bulldozed last year as part of ISIL's campaign to destroy symbols it considered to be idolatrous. A powerful magnitude 7.8 earthquake has rocked New Zealand, prompting a tsunami warning and knocking out power and phone services in many parts of the country. Officials warned all people along the east coast of the country to get to higher ground as the first waves began to roll in. French citizens came out on the drizzly streets of Paris to pay homage to victims of the November attacks on the anniversary of the killing. Just a reminder that 130 people were killed on November 13th of last year when groups of gunmen and suicide bombers attacked the perimeter of the Stade de France Sports Stadium, the Bataclan, and a string of 6 bars and cafes. The sites of the attacks were reinforced by heavy police presence, with security perimeters installed and passers-by having their bags checked. Earlier this morning, French President François Hollande and Paris Mayor Anne Hidalgo unveiled a series of commemorative speeches at each of the bars and cafes targeted by the Islamist militants. And coming up next, we discuss the week after Trump's election with Yumna Naufal. Stay tuned.
Thousands of demonstrators marched through the streets of New York and in cities across the United States to protest against President-elect Donald Trump, who they say will threaten their civil and human rights. Rallies were scheduled throughout the day in New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago, where organizers said they hope to continue the momentum after several nights of demonstrations triggered by the real estate mogul's surprise win in Tuesday's presidential election. Chanting slogans including "Not My President," several thousand protesters marched peacefully up New York City's Fifth Avenue past its glitzy storefronts before filling the streets around Trump Tower, the president-elect's skyscraper home. Later, large numbers broke away and marched through various locations in Midtown Manhattan, including past the New York Public Library on 42nd Street and Fifth Avenue, and then on Times Square. We welcome back in our studios Assistant Professor of Political Science and International Affairs and political commentator, Dr. Jennifer Skulti-Awais. Thank you for being with us. It's been quite a week and a lot of unexpected surprises, but here we are, 5 days after the election, and we saw we got the chance to see a much softer approach of President-elect Donald Trump. So as it stands today, how do you think the weeks leading up to January 20th, when he's inaugurated, are going to play out?
Well, I think we are in somewhat uncharted waters. I mean, this is the first president that's ever been elected that it has neither any elected political experience behind him nor military experience. So it is something different. And the country is quite divided, but frankly, the country has been quite divided for quite some time. So this is not something new. I think that many people welcomed Trump's more conciliatory approach, and the fact that a number of old political hands seem to be going into his transition team and to think about how they will transition by the inauguration. And also, of course, President Obama welcoming Trump the very, very soon after the election, and really giving quite a powerful speech about the institutions and the long institutional heritage in the United States about peaceful transitions of power.
I just want to, before we get into what can we expect from him in the first 100 days of office, I just want to talk about how this election played out, because the media was extremely misleading, and according to a lot of analysts, could have actually done no favor to Democratic nominee Hillary Clinton, because a lot of people had already assumed she had won, or she was going to win, including Donald Trump, who looked surprised.
He did look surprised.
You know, we saw the halls, the difference in halls. Hillary Clinton had a huge staged, the map of the United States, fireworks ready. Donald Trump had a much more modest, humble stage, and she didn't even come out that day. So what do you think went wrong?
Well, I think the media is culpable in part, but I think it's culpable over a much longer period of time. I think the media really hyped his candidacy as kind of a circus, and also spent too much time on Clinton's email problems and some of her other issues. But to be fair, also I've got to say, my people in terms of political scientists, they were the ones doing the polling. They were the ones who had statistical models.
Each and every one had her winning.
Virtually all of them. There was one political scientist who correctly predicted a Trump win, but he was virtually alone.
How can we trust the polls going forward when every single poll had her winning by a margin?
Well, I think that what this election can tell us, one of the things, is that the electorate wanted change. And when change is desired, that means that looking back to see patterns isn't as helpful. So that's what polling does. It seeks previous patterns of behavior, the history of behavior, and also these analysts, frankly, do have to get out and talk to more Americans and talk perhaps in less inflammatory ways.
We can't discount the fact that a lot of the Trump voters actually probably didn't come out publicly and state they were going to vote for Trump. So that could have been misleading as well. Do you think, I know we were talking about this and how one commentator on CNN said this was a white lash. Do you feel, because Hillary Clinton was very much following what was going to continue what President Barack Obama was doing right now, and the president and the first lady went out of their way to campaign for Hillary Clinton. So, and he's getting a lot of favorable reviews. So why not Hillary? I mean,
how do those two things go together? I think when all the polls, sorry to bring the polls into this, talk about that people want to change, and that's why they ended up voting for Trump. We should note, of course, that Clinton got 2 million more popular votes than Trump did. But the way the Electoral College is structured, he won, and everyone knew going into it that it was the Electoral College that chooses the president. But this Van Jones on CNN called it a white lash, instead of a backlash. And I think that, to be fair to a lot of Trump voters, they didn't vote for Trump solely because he espouses racist views, but that he espoused a turning back to somehow this more mythical America. And for many white Americans, frankly, I think that was attractive to them. And they weren't thinking so much about how the 1950s really weren't a good time to be a woman, a person of color, other minorities in America. And I think that is going to be perhaps one of the hardest things to heal, because both sides aren't aren't really hearing each other very effectively.
We talk about Mr. Trump now and how the president-elect is going to tackle foreign policy. It's been a very big question throughout the campaign, right now, and probably will be in the first 100 days of office. And he has publicly stated that while he did not like Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, he is looking to maybe have a rapprochement with Russia, who backs President Assad. And he said that backing Assad would actually ensure that extremism, when you see what's on the other side, doesn't flourish and can be, you know, he's been very vocal about stopping ISIS. So what can we expect in terms of Trump's Middle East foreign policy?
For the Middle East, actually, a Trump victory may be offer a possibility for a more stable sort of situation, in that Trump has already said that he wants to work with Putin and the Russian government, along with Assad, to fight Islamic State. That's the focus. Now, how that will play out with the Gulf monarchies and their historically strong relationship with the United States, that's to be seen. But it also
will there be a shift? Will there be a
shifting? But it also seems that the KSA, for one, not only continued low oil prices are forcing them to look domestically, but they're also tied down. They remain tied down in Yemen, and so I think that. So
it works. It works in Trump's favor. Actually, this is a good time. Now, Iran. We've seen Iran kind of do all right, ever since the sanctions have been lifted. Iran, of course, an ally of Russia and Assad, and if the U.S. president makes that a priority, who's to say what won't? Because what's been happening hasn't helped so far, because nobody's really done anything.
No, it doesn't seem to have helped. But the Republican Party has been very against kind of the normalization of relations with Iran. And so that remember that it's not only Trump won the presidency, but also the Republicans kept the Senate, they kept the House of Representatives, and now they're going to soon be able to appoint the missing Supreme Court justice. And so all three branches of government will be under the Republicans, which means not that they can rewrite all laws, but they will have considerable influence on policies, on law, for the next 4 years.
One last question, because of what you were saying. How does that explain what he wants as the normalization of the relations with Russia, which have until now been anything but stable?
Well, it could be more stable in the sense of just saying to Russia, okay, we're going to let you have a sphere of influence, would be the Baltic states, other parts of Eastern Europe, and we're going to get rid of the sanctions, and we're just going to let you be. That could be a sort of new period of stability. At the same time, there are significant pressures inside the Republican Party, as well as inside the Democratic Party, that are saying we have to, as Americans, keep our alliance responsibilities, and that means responsibilities to NATO, and the three Baltic states are members of NATO.
It's definitely an interesting period to be following all this. We look forward to having you back here as these events unfold, and they will be unfolding quite fast. So thank you for being with us.
Okay,
that was Dr.
pleasure.
Jennifer Skoltioways talking to us about the week after Trump. Back to you, Linda.
Thank you, Yumna. This marks the end of our bulletin for today. Now for a reminder of our top stories. Thousands of people, including Prime Minister-designate Saad Hariri, participate in the annual Beirut Marathon. Maronite Patriarch Shadadai calls for the formation of an inclusive government before Independence Day. And a powerful 7.8 magnitude earthquake rocks New Zealand, prompting a tsunami warning. That's it from Yumna Naufal and myself for this Sunday. Catch us again tomorrow for more updates. Take care till then.